was a man. He came to his veterinarian with a very big problem. He says, Doc, I've got a problem. I have a parrot, and he became so foul-mouthed. He speaks with such vulgarity the whole day. I can't even host people in my house anymore. They come in, he's cursing at them, saying things at them, just totally inappropriate. And it just nothing works. And the parrot is only seeing that he's getting attention from it, so he's doing it even more. It's just out of hand. What do I do over here? So the veterinarian says, listen, I've got a little trick. Just hear me out on this one. Do you have a freezer at home? He said, a freezer? Yeah, of course, I've got a freezer. It's okay, very good. Go home. Just don't say a word. Take the parrot, put him in the freezer.
Oh, gosh.
60 seconds, that's it. Count to 60 seconds. And then you open the door back up, and you put it back in its cage, but don't say a word. Just 60 seconds, and that's it. He's like, Doc, you serious? You're pulling my leg over here. What? Put him in a freezer for 60 seconds? I was like, trust me. Take him, put him in the freezer for 60 seconds. Just do it. Trust me on this one. He says, all right. He goes home. Come on in, Shelly. And close the door behind you. And feel free to get a coffee. Don't worry. We're still only at the joke. Okay. You know this one already, right? Yeah. I know. This is getting tough, by the way, coming up with good new jokes. Okay, but 1 second. Just make believe as if I never told you before, okay? Just indulge me here for a second. He goes home, takes his parrot, picks it up, puts it into the freezer, counts 60 seconds, opens it back up, and puts the parrot back. I don't know, what's supposed to happen now? There's a few seconds of awkward silence, and then the parrot says, may I share with you something? He says, sure, absolutely. He says, I am absolutely sorry. I sincerely apologize for the way I've been speaking up until now. My conduct has been absolutely embarrassing. I would like to sincerely apologize, and I want to share with you my firm commitment that I'm going to be turning a new page, and I'm never going to be speaking this way ever again. This guy can't believe it. What just happened over here? So he says, yes, dear parrot, I absolutely accept your apologies. Thank you so much. I want to encourage you as you journey on turn a new leaf. Oh, wonderful. He's turning to go, and the parrot says, just one more last thing, if I may. He says, sure. So the parrot says, what did the turkey do wrong? There you go. Now you guys know the trick. Yep. All right, dear friends, this week, this weekend is Thanksgiving. We're all going to be sitting around with our family over some turkey. And for millions of Americans, this is going to be the very first time they're going to be confronting their family members who voted for the wrong candidate on the ballot a few weeks ago. This is a big problem, which is exactly why we are timing today's class, The Art of Disagreeing, for Thanksgiving weekend. And I want to thank all of you for making it work this week. Do you remember we did once a class on Thanksgiving Day? Dana was there. We had a Thursday morning class. For some reason, we didn't push it off. Dana and Judy were there, and Mark was there. Remember that? We did a class on Thanksgiving Day, literally Thursday morning. I don't know what we were thinking. I was young and naive then. I don't know. We just did it. But you guys were there.
Maybe that's what the turkey did.
All right, dear friends. Number one, some ground rules. Number one, just for the next hour and a half, none of you are allowed to disagree with me. Meaning, I want to teach you the art of disagreeing. You won't have the art unless so just for 1 hour and a half, just agree, and then afterwards you could disagree going forward. Okay, but in all seriousness, I have a freezer, but I don't have a turkey in my freezer. A little problem. Okay, dear friends, we Jews are so proud of the saying, 2 Jews and 3 opinions. We take great pride in it. It became a cliche. The only problem is that makes a very big problem, that we Jews are very, very prone to disagreeing, which creates all types of issues and problems in our life. Like they say the story that a young couple just had their very first child, a baby boy. It's the night before the bris. The next morning is about to be the bris. And they call up their rabbi for an emergency meeting. We have a serious problem. We need to meet with you right now, all right? Come to the rabbi. The husband says, we've got a big problem. Tomorrow we're naming our baby boy, and I feel I'm the father. I should have the right to name the boy after my father. I want the baby named after my father. And she says, no way. Your father was a crook, a scoundrel, a no-goodnik. He's going to be named after my father. My father was a good guy, an upstanding individual, a Torah scholar, not your father. It's the rabbi. Okay, that's the problem. So the rabbi turns to the father and says, what was your father's name? So he says, Meir. The rabbi turns to the wife and says, what was your father's name? She says, Meir. So the rabbi says, I've got an idea. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be naming your child Meir. In 20 years from now, I'm putting it on my calendar. We're going to come back here and meet. We're going to take a look at the child, and we'll already determine which father he was named after. All right. Before we jump in, I just want to remind you a little bit, some of the foundations of this course. Number one, we are not limiting disagreements to any specific kind of relationship. This course is nurturing relationships on all levels. There's a circle of intimacy, of friendship, of participation, of exchange. And disagreements could happen on all levels. Of course, on some levels it's more consequential, less consequential. But it's a problem all across the board. What we're going to be learning about today is not limited to any specific one, and that's just an important thing to keep in mind. We Jews are good at disagreeing at all venues, on all arenas. So this applies to all. That's number one. Point number two is, let's just remind ourselves, our two very good friends, our two souls, the animal soul and the godly soul. And the foundation of this course, like we've learned in the first class, is that the godly soul is naturally built for healthy and good relationships. The animal soul is just too self-indulged in its own ego and its own sense of self, and it's always seeing itself and looking just to protect itself and augment itself, etc. And therefore, the animal soul really sucks at relationships. And the Jewish key to healthy and building good relationships, of being the best people we could be in our families, in our circles, in our society, in social life, is being more of a soul-oriented person. That's where the magic happens, a godly soul person, and we're going to see that as well today. Which is, again, I think it's just such a profound idea. What makes us a better parent, a better child, a better spouse, a better sibling, a better friend, a better coworker, a better everything. What does spirituality have to do with that? And Judaism says no. That is actually directly related to how much a person is in touch with their soul. The more we are in tune with our souls, the more we allow our souls to shine within our lives, it's just going to be inevitable. We're going to show up to our relationships also with a little bit of that soul sense. And it's going to be different. Things are going to be different as we're slowly teasing out through all these classes. So let us talk about disagreeing, and let me first share with you what we're not going to be doing. It's very important that we do this because I want to make sure that while we go through these ideas, we're not applying them to the wrong areas of life. There are certain things that maybe we'll look at on a very we'll generalize it as a disagreement, but it's not really a disagreement. And I want to make sure that we are removing those from today's class, like that we could just all mentally be in the right place for today's class. Today, we are not going to be talking about disagreements that stem from what we'll call betrayal. What's betrayal? Somebody who you thought is a very good friend is bad-mouthing you behind your back. That's not a disagreement. That's really a betrayal. Somebody is turning their back on the relationship in a betraying way. That's very, very different. Or anything like that. Somebody is not being honest with you. That's already a whole different level, where that is not called a disagreement. That's called a relationship betrayal. That's a whole different topic. In such cases, there's a question. How, and even if, could we reconcile what is the process for forgiveness? What is the process for getting past this? That is going to be, we're going to be talking about that a lot in our last class, lesson 6. We're not talking about relationship betrayals in today's class. That's one thing we're not going to be talking about. So it's only going to hurt us if we're trying to apply the teachings we learned today to a disagreement that stems from betrayal. That's important. Number 2, we're not going to be talking today about moral deficiencies, or let's just use a more simple word, shortcomings. Everybody, God built all of us with strengths, with weaknesses, with problems. And sometimes those problems get in the way of our relationships. And that's a very big part of being in a relationship with anybody, even a friend. Just, they're always late. I don't know. It could be anything and everything. They suffer from something, just like we all do, each in our own way, a certain weakness, which could perhaps put a little bit of a strain on the relationships. Somebody has a quick temper. I don't know. It could be anything and everything. So in a relationship, sometimes that could also cause a little bit of stress, a little bit of problems, and there's maybe a process of working through that as well. We're going to be talking about that as well over the next 2 weeks. Next week is going to be all about the art of positivity in relationships, even looking at the people in our lives who have flaws. How do we deal with that? And as well, we're going to be talking about in the 5th class about the art of helping people overcome their flaws. How does that work in a relationship? But today we're not going to be talking about that. We're not talking about betrayals. We're not talking about moral deficiencies or shortcomings, whatever they may be. Rather, what we are talking about today is specifically disagreements per se. Not disagreements that come from a personality issue, not that it comes from an act of betrayal, but simply we're two people in a relationship and we don't see eye to eye on an issue. And, this could maybe become a very big problem within our relationship. So take a look at page 95 in your books. We have a few examples over here. Circles of intimacy. What are going to be the examples of disagreements in circles of intimacy? For example, spouses disagree over spending habits, budgeting priorities, or saving goals. Spouses disagree over the division of labor and household chores. Spouses disagree about their diet and eating habits. I don't know, maybe that's a weakness? I'm not sure. Okay, is that a disagreement? Or maybe that doesn't belong here, actually. Okay, parents disagree about disciplinary approaches, educational philosophies, or screen time rules. That's a very big one. Parents of young kids, we're struggling what to do, and we're not seeing eye to eye on that. That's a real disagreement. Siblings disagree over the best way to care for their aging parents. And in circles of participation, members of a synagogue disagree over leadership roles and governance structure. The board is not getting along. Okay, we don't have time, but we could say a few jokes about that one. Okay, members of an association disagree over the decision-making process and the allocation of resources. Co-workers or partners disagree on whether to minimize risks or adopt a more ambitious strategy. Neighbors disagree over social issues, the role of government, and the economy, which is a really wonderful thing to argue about because we could really change so much about it. So, all right, dear friends, that's disagreements. We have them all the time in our lives, the people within our lives, whether it's family, friends, acquaintances, and we just don't see eye to eye on certain issues. And it can even become something which is a source of tension, a sore point in the relationship, which is really front and center. How does the Torah guide us to work through it? So, dear friends, what we're going to be going through today, we're going to split today's class into 3 parts. Let's start with the basic approach, level number 1, let's call it, and we're going to dispel a lot of common myths about relationships. That's going to be level number 1. Level number 2, we're going to call that the advanced approach. We're going to really go and see how the Torah really wants us to understand the role of disagreements and what the purpose of them are and how we navigate them. And number 3, at the very end of the class, we'll talk about some practical tips and advice that the Torah gives us to use the attitudes and the ideology that we're going to be learning in today's class and how to bring them how to implement them practically, some practical ideas. So, ready to get going? Here we go. Ready to disagree? Can we agree to disagree? Okay, no. All right. Dear friends, let's begin with some myth busting. 3 myths that people assume with disagreements, about disagreements, and the biggest problem is that these myths are part of the problem. We have the wrong attitude about disagreements, and that creates the issue. Misconception number one. Myth number one is, and we all kind of instinctively react this way, but myth number one is that we think that a disagreement is the sign of the relationship going sour. Uh-oh, I've had a disagreement. Now I don't know where this is going. That whole idea of connecting a disagreement with, and saying, okay, this is telling me, this is signifying to me, I've got a problem. My relationship is starting to unravel. I thought it was strong. No, that bond has been weakened because now we're in a disagreement. That is massive mistake number one. That is massive mistake number one. This perception comes from the mistaken notion that a good relationship is like, when we're all on the same page, and we even have like that romanticized version of like, we finish each other's sentences, and we know what we're, I know what, we always know what we're thinking about. And then it's like, oh, no, we're not finishing each other's sentences. We actually have a difference of opinion. I guess maybe we're not made for each other. And all that whole type of thing, that a disagreement starts creating this feeling of distance. And what Judaism says is like, absolutely not. That is like, you're already derailing your life by having this misconception. This is so not what Judaism sees it. Let's see how Judaism sees disagreements on the most basic level. Let's begin with text 1a, page 98. And Carrie, we'll start with you. From our sages.
The whole thing?
The whole thing. The whole Megillah.
Just as human faces are not identical, so their minds are not alike.
There you go. No two people look alike. And no two people think alike. It's an amazing thing. We all have the same face. We all have two eyes. We all have a nose. We all have a mouth. It's pretty amazing. It just shows the artwork of God. Literally no people could look alike. It's an amazing idea. And our sages tell us, so too, there's no two people in the world that think alike. People have different ways of seeing things with their mind, different perspectives, different temperaments, different emotional build. There's so many different elements that come into this. But the point is, it is part of nature. Just like people looking different is a part of nature, people thinking differently is the most natural part of nature. Therefore, Judaism tells us the idea that you're going to be in a relationship with another person, whether it's a friend, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a child, whether it's your spouse, and that you are going to be at some point not agreeing on something, is 1,000% normal and healthy. It's to be expected. It's to be welcomed even. And Judaism would even say the opposite. If two people are in a relationship and like, oh, we agree on everything, I've got news for you. That's impossible. So it's perhaps actually a sign that you're not in a very healthy level of a relationship. Either you both didn't really get to know each other yet well enough. I mean, you agree on everything. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So either you don't know each other well enough, so this relationship has yet to really mature, or maybe even a bigger problem, people in the relationship are not truly being themselves. They're not really in touch with themselves, and they're not really bringing themselves to the relationship. Maybe they're just being blinded in love, whatever it is, but if two people are truly in a relationship and they're comfortable to be themselves in that relationship, you're going to disagree. And that is not a sign of something going wrong. The opposite. That is a sign that here we have two healthy, normal individuals, each built with their own look and their own mind. So therefore, Judaism says when a disagreement arises in a relationship, there's literally no reason to be alarmed. Number one, it's totally normal. There's no reason to assume that now 1 second I have to rethink. Maybe this relationship is not the right relationship for me. What are you talking about? This is so normal and healthy. And the biggest problem is when we start doubting the relationship because of a disagreement, and that starts really derailing us and things. Versus just 1 second, have a healthy perspective. Okay, that's okay. We're two different people. We're allowed to think differently. And that is so normal, and it's not a sign of anything gone wrong in the relationship, perhaps even the opposite. Now, let's take this even further. And Carrie, we'll give you text 1b as well. Okay, page 98.
The Midrash teaches, just as humans' faces are not identical, so their minds are not alike. Just as you tolerate others despite their looking different from you, so must you tolerate others who think differently from you.
Would anybody ever entertain the thought that, you know what? I just noticed you have freckles. I don't. I don't know if we could be in a relationship anymore. And that's not like something which we need to like work on. Like I need to really work on stopping to allow looks to. It's so intuitive to us. Like I have brown eyes. If you have blue eyes, it doesn't bother me. So that's what the sage is telling us. It shouldn't bother us to the same level when there's another human being who thinks differently than us. That's okay. It's so normal and so healthy. That is not a sign of any weakening of a relationship. And that whole idea that in a relationship, we have to be in full agreement, and if not, then that means things are going wrong, is the first step where we are getting relationships and disagreements wrong. This is the first thing. Relationships don't spell doom to our relationships. The opposite, it's a sign of a healthy, mature relationship. This is misconception number one that we are busting today. Okay, myth number one, that disagreements means a weakened bond. Judaism says, and people think that unanimity, people agreeing on everything, that means healthy. And Judaism says, no, not at all. Okay, Judaism says, no, just as human faces are not identical, so their minds are not alike. Disagreements are hardwired, and disagreements means that we are truly being authentic here. Because it's inevitable. Yes?
If two people agree on something, then time passes and one person changes their mind, does that still hold?
Yeah, why not? What's the problem?
I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, so we could mature and change minds. And even that thought process itself is part of how we're built. I'm built to see things in one way, and as I mature, I see things another way. That's part of it. I guess you could say, to use the analogy, just like our looks change. Right? Yes?
It seems, and I think we've learned this in the last couple of years, that the nature of the disagreement is really important too. This is an example. I've heard of couples getting married and they both agreed they didn't want children.
Mm-hmm.
And then down the road, one of them decides they want a child. I mean, that's kind of, it depends on the nature of it, don't you think?
That's also true. That's also true. Let's get there. We're going to, so that's an example of like a very, very heavy, personal, and critical in the sense of this is actionable. We're not arguing about who should have been the president of the United States, which we all know none of us cast the swing vote, It wasn't like, my vote. Okay, so, that's a good example. That's very, very important. It's very relevant and very personal. We're going to get to that. Meaning, we'll see. Let's go through it. We have now step number one. Step number one is the basic idea that disagreements are simply normal and natural. And the worst thing to do is to start doubting the relationship, which itself starts sending you down the wrong road. Okay, don't go down that road. Myth number two is that if there's a disagreement, that means that we've got what type of problem do we have? Something to do with love. Marriage, love. If we're disagreeing, it's a sign we don't love each other as much as we used to. We used to love each other, we never disagreed. And now we're disagreeing. What does that mean? I've got a love problem. So it means that if I'm disagreeing, we have a deficiency of love. And if we need how do we combat this disagreement? We have to add a little bit more love into the pot. Another half a cup of love more, maybe another full cup. You need more love. Like the saying goes, love conquers all. Who said that? I don't know. Some guy. Okay, doesn't make a difference. He was wrong. He was wrong. The whole idea that disagreement in a relationship means we've got a love problem. We don't like each other anymore. Now we're not feeling each other as much. That is a total misconception. And if you see, it's unraveling from the previous one. Your first misconception is that my disagreement means we've got a problem. And that obviously means you lead to myth number two. I've got a love problem. I don't have enough love. Oh, I thought we loved each other. Now I see we don't love each other as much. You see how one misconception starts it takes you down that rabbit hole even worse. Now you think there's a love problem. Judaism would say disagreeing has nothing to do with love. Navigating disagreements has nothing to do with love. The whole attitude of it must be we don't love each other. And if we're disagreeing, it means we need to work on loving each other more. That whole attitude is wrong. Not to say that love is not good. Love is wonderful, and we need love in all relationships. But that is not going to help us work through this issue. And perhaps Judaism says, not only does love have nothing to do with it, it may actually be making the problem worse. Sometimes unhealthy disagreements are not happening because there's a lack of love. Very often disagreements are happening because there is too much love or unbalanced love. So in fact, not only is love not the solution over here, it could even be part of the problem. What does that mean? What does that mean that love could be part of the problem? So let's take a moment and talk a little bit about the great sage Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived in the 2nd century of the Common Era, close to 2,000 years ago. And he was an unbelievable sage and a beloved teacher of Torah and a mentor. And thousands of students flocked to be the students of Rabbi Akiva, to study Torah under Rabbi Akiva, spend a few years under his guidance, under his tutelage. And Rabbi Akiva was a celebrated teacher. And it's not just people came to hear a lecture from him. People dedicated a few years of their life to literally live and personally receive and grow under his guidance. It was a very real form of teacher and student relationship. Rabbi Akiva was known, his most famous teaching is the following statement. I'll put it up here on the board. Rabbi Akiva says, the mitzvah to love your neighbor as yourself, this is the Torah's major principle. He championed this line. You want to know what the most important mitzvah, what the most important principle of all of Judaism is? It's love your neighbor as you love yourself. So you can only imagine that if you are a student of Rabbi Akiva, and your teacher, Rabbi Akiva, his most important value, his motto, is that the most important mitzvah is to love your fellow Jew, you would imagine that what would the students look like? Big lovers of Jews, right? This is probably the rabbi who had students who were warm and they weren't harsh. But the Talmud tells us something not so good. Let's read text 2a. Page 99, Gila, we're up to you?
Yes. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students. They did not behave toward each other with respect.
Can you imagine that? How did that happen? Rabbi Akiva's great luck. The one teacher who he teaches that the most important mitzvah is love your neighbor as yourself, he's the one stuck with students who aren't respecting each other. How does that happen? By the way, not bad. 12,000 pairs of students. That means how many students he had? 24,000 students. That's what we're working on towards here. Eventually, we got the 60,000.
Why doesn't it say 24,000 students? Why do they write it like that?
Peers? I don't know. It's a good question. I guess in the yeshiva they came as peers. I don't know. It's a good question. The most recent Jewish Federation study said there's about 60,000, somewhere upward of 60,000 Jewish homes in Metro Detroit. So we got some work to do to get to 24,000 students here. All right, that's the goal. But it's a very big question. How does it happen that Rabbi Akiva suffers? That it's his students who are not being respectful to each other? And the answer is a very deep answer. The essence of the answer is, you know why they were lacking respect to one another? It was specifically because of the love, which is a very deep idea. A lot of love, if there's no love, then you don't have such a big problem, as we'll see in a moment. But too much love, and it's not counterbalanced, could create a very big problem, which was the problem that Rabbi Akiva's students suffered from. Let's read this in text 2b. This is a very deep text. This is a very deep, meaning we have to really think this through over here. Gila, I'm going to give this to you as well, because last text was very short. Page 101, text 2b.
Our sages note that each human mind varies from all others. This was also the case with the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. They all grasped their master's teachings according to their individual paths and understandings, each assuming that their own interpretation was the true meaning of Rabbi Akiva's words. When they realized that their colleagues understood their master's words differently in a manner that they regarded as incorrect, they became disinclined to treat the others with esteem, specifically because of the fundamental teaching of Rabbi Akiva, love your neighbor as yourself. This is the Torah's major principle. Without this mandate, they might not have cared so much if the colleague failed to grasp what they considered to be the true meaning of their master's Torah. However, since their teacher, Rabbi Akiva, taught them about the importance of fulfilling the commandment to love your neighbor as yourself, each student endeavored to influence all those included in the definition of neighbor, especially their fellow students, so that they would similarly grasp their master's Torah in the true way. They could not respect a colleague who did not accept this true way, at least not to the extent expected of Rabbi Akiva's students.
This is very deep over here. Lacking respect didn't mean that they were making pranks on each other and just being like low-handed, below the belt, not nice to each other. Something much deeper over here. They had so much love, and that was creating a problem. 24,000 students. These were real, smart, intellectual students. When they studied under Rabbi Akiva, they internalized his words. But 24,000 students, each one was smart, intelligent, and each one had their own personality. Every single student understood what Rabbi Akiva said a little bit differently. Which is really what happens when you have a real teacher and there's a rich guidance and rich teachings. You could discover 1 second. I heard it and I understood it one way, and you heard it, you understood it a different way. And it can sometimes be in a subtle way. If I don't love you and I don't care about you, so what do I say? All right, the heck with you. You didn't understand it well. My problem. Too bad on you that you don't understand it properly. But if I love you and I believe you got it wrong, then what's my attitude? I got to fix this. I got to fix this. It's not good that you don't understand the truth. So I'm now going to go and smother you with my love and concern that you need to understand it the way I think because I think I'm right. And that was creating a tremendous amount of tension. 24,000 very smart, intelligent, and very strong-minded individuals, each one understanding things a little bit differently. And they couldn't let go. They just loved each other so much, and it was creating a very big problem. This is the problem of love. The problem of love is, it says, I want to be close with you. Let's be on the same page. It bothers me that you don't see things the way I see things. That's the way it works. If the guy cashing you out at Kroger's disagrees with you, you're like, all right, I'm not going to allow this to really bother me over here. But if it's somebody you love, what do you say? No, I want to really, I feel bad that you don't agree about who we should have voted for a month ago. I'm just saying, I really love you. It bothers me that we don't see eye to eye on this. And that all of a sudden becomes a smothering love. It's coming from a good place. But love by itself is not good enough. What were the students of Rabbi Akiva missing? I'm going to get to you in a second. What were the students of Rabbi Akiva missing? What's the word that the Talmud uses in the text? Not gevura. What was that? Respect. Respect is not love. Love says, I want to be close with you. I want to bond with you. Let's be as tight as possible. Respect, the Hebrew word is kavod. Respect, honor, reverence. These are very heavy words. We use this word, the Hebrew word kavod, for God. I respect God. I revere God. I honor God. There's kavod for parents. I respect my parents. We respect and honor the Shabbos. Respect, honor, have reverence for the Shabbos. That's a whole different thing. What does respect do to you? Respect actually creates distance, healthy distance. If there's somebody who you really look up to, you value their opinion for whatever reason, there's somebody head and shoulders beyond you. When they say their opinion, how do you accept that opinion all of a sudden? You don't say, nah, you're wrong. It's, okay, I respect that. I respect your opinion. It's somebody you respect. There's love and there's respect, and they're very, very different. You need both. Love is pulling you to get closer. And respect is pulling you back and saying, I'm going to create space for you. That's what respect does. What does it mean we have respect for God? Respect for God means, because I respect God and I honor God and I revere God, I'm going to make space for God in my life. If I don't respect you, I don't have any place for you in my life. If I respect you, I'm going to make time, a schedule for you. That's what it means. I'm going to create empty space that you could be here. Somebody who you don't respect, they call you up and say, can we go out for lunch? You'll say, no, I don't have any time for you. Somebody who you do respect, what do you say? Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's meet tomorrow for lunch. I'm going to make time for you. That's what respect means. I'm going to create space for your existence. We respect the Shabbos. What does it mean you respect the Shabbos? What does it mean to honor the Shabbos? It means make space for Shabbos. Friday night comes, you don't say, oh, I don't have any time for Shabbos. No, I'm going to change my schedule to make place. That's what respect means. So what does respect mean in a relationship? And this is what Rabbi Akiva's students were missing. It means they loved each other, but they weren't creating space for the other. Back off and honor the other person. I respect you, and I respect the fact that you understand it differently. Not respect in a cheap way, like, oh, I respect your opinion, which is a very cheap way of saying, and I don't really care about what you have to say. Right? Yeah, that's okay. I respect the fact that you're wrong. But no, really respect it. I respect the idea that you see things differently than me. Why should we respect somebody else's opinion? What are we respecting? What are we honoring? What are we in reverence of? These are very heavy words. Why should I honor somebody else if I think he's wrong? I should honor him. I should give space for his position. Why should I? So one second, I'm going to get to questions. I just want to get through this over here. This is the key idea. Judaism tells us not only we have to tolerate the other opinions, but we have to honor them, respect them. Why? God made every single individual, every single person that exists, God made them for a mission, for a purpose. And God made us, each one of us differently. We're tailor-made for our purpose. We are who we are because that is who we need to be to show up and do what we need to do. We need to honor that. I honor the idea that God made you. You have a very specific purpose. Nobody else in the world can fulfill your purpose because you are who you are. And those differences of look, differences of opinion, stem from that. I honor the idea that God made you unique to be who he needs to have in this world. And if you are a clone of me, that means I'm not honoring your unique individuality, your unique existence and purpose here in this world. That's what Judaism says. We have to respect each other. Not just respect each other as human beings, but respect the differences and be in honor of that and to create space of that. That's what Rabbi Akiva's students were missing. Okay, I apologize.
Oh, I didn't realize, first of all, that it was a rhetorical question.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
But also, it says in Proverbs, right? Who is wise, right?
One of ones from everyone, that's right. Is that Proverbs? I think it's Ethics of Our Fathers, but Pirkei Avot, yeah. But yeah, that's right. By the way, so even that attitude, how do you learn from everybody? When you respect, not just the idea that they exist. I respect your existence. It's not about I respect your right. No, I respect your individuality, even though it's so different than mine.
You know, we also learn at the end, another teacher once taught us that at the end of our lives, we're either a warning or an example. And, you know, we also can see how other people do things and learn from that too, and if it's not necessarily something we want to emulate. I think that's interesting.
That's interesting, yeah. Well, we'll get to that soon. Paulina.
I'm thinking about withdrawing my questions because I was thinking that there is an issue between Chesed and Gibur.
Let's not get too lost in that.
Okay, that's why I'm-
But in a certain way, it is those two sides of the coin. There's love and there's. Now, when I was a little child, my father. I don't know if the story is fully on point, but it's a little bit on point. I'll share it with you. When I was a kid, my father shared with me what does it mean when there's too much love and there's no counterbalance. This is the story. There's a man who went out to the wilderness and befriended a grizzly bear. How do you befriend a grizzly bear? I don't know. He slowly gets closer, and every single day he would bring a whole nice piece of meat. And slowly he built up trust and rapport with his grizzly bear until they became besties. And they lived together in the wilderness. And he helps the bear every single day go hunting, and the bear would protect him. And the bear, you don't mess with this bear. This is his dearest friend, and he is willing to do anything to protect his human friend. Well, one day the human friend is taking his afternoon nap, and a little fly is hovering over the man. And it's just keeps on coming back and landing on and the bear is there, standing guard, watching over his friend. And the bear is trying to shush the fly away. He can't get rid of it. And the bear is just getting so frustrated. And finally, the bear lifts up a big rock, waits for his opportunity, and as soon as the fly landed on the forehead of his friend, and he, and And mission successful. He killed the fly. And his friend. All right, details. What does that mean? Sometimes it could be so much love, but you're killing the guy. It's a deep idea. So what does that mean? When we have disagreements, it doesn't necessarily mean we've got a love problem. Actually, very often disagreements come from a healthy dose of love. I actually care about you. It's possible. I'm not saying all disagreements do, but very often it does. I'm just creating tension with my child because I love him so much. So I just can't let go. I keep on harping on this disagreement we have. And the answer is not more love or less love. The answer is respect. The kavod, this honor. This is such an important and critical piece over here. So misconception number one is there's no problem with disagreements. It's healthy, it's normal. Every human being is built to disagree with other human beings. And number two is it's not a love problem. Rather, the only problem is respect. That's number two. Number three, misconception number three is that when we have a disagreement, we need to resolve it. Right? That's also another cliche. We never went to bed unless we came to peace about a disagreement, right? It's also, by the way, it's my personality. When I have a disagreement with somebody, I'm like, I need to work through this. I will not let go of a disagreement. We need to address it and we need to get past this. So we have that thing, there's disagreement. No, we cannot move on in life till we get through this problem. And Judaism teaches, and there's a medrash which speaks about this, and this was a very big piece of advice that the Rebbe would give very often. Actually, wait too often. The answer is, you disagree? It's okay. Don't keep on focusing. Don't shine the spotlight on the disagreement. And I want to share with you a story here. Maybe I actually should have put on the video of this individual sharing the story. Unbelievable story. This was a shliach, one of the senior shluchim in England, London, England. There was a communal figure, I think he was maybe even a big rabbi, so a big rabbi in England, and he had a certain position on a very big issue that was rocking the Jewish world in those times, the 70s. And the Rebbe came out publicly and with a very different opinion. Now the Rebbe was somebody who was a very outspoken individual. The Rebbe didn't just teach Torah in the abstract. The Rebbe was giving, he wanted people to understand and have a true understanding of how to relate to things that are happening. And that also sometimes put the Rebbe in differences of opinion with other leading figures in the Jewish world. Now, somebody shared with this person, this big macher, some big hotshot in England, that the Rebbe spoke out publicly against you. That was, somebody shared that with this guy. So this guy was like, oh, me and the Lubavitcher Rebbe were on bad terms. That's the lead up of the story over here. Okay? Let's read text 3. From Rabbi Shmuel Lu. Paulina, we're up to you. Text 3, page 102.
The unifying force. On the day after Simchas Torah in 1974, the Rebbe asked me if recently I had heard from a certain person, a communal figure in England. I said that as a matter of fact, I had. I added, I had heard that this person had very strongly criticized the Rebbe. The Rebbe told me the reasons for this person's harsh statement was that somebody had misinformed him about what the Rebbe had said about him in a public talk. As a result, this person believed that the Rebbe had attacked him personally. But, said the Rebbe, I do not speak about personalities. I speak about ideas.
So 1 second, just let me stop it over there. This is a big part of how the Rebbe conducted himself. The Rebbe would never ever speak out against people and say, that guy was wrong. The Rebbe would only speak about ideas. He would disagree with ideas, not about people. The Rebbe was very good at that, about never making anything personal. And this is what the Rebbe is telling him over here. I never spoke against him. He's a good guy. I spoke against, the word the Rebbe used was a shitta, a philosophy, an ideology. So that's the first thing. This person, the report that he got was the Rebbe spoke bad about him, and he's like, all right, not to be outmatched, I now need to start speaking against the Rebbe. Okay, story continues. Go ahead, Polina.
As the Rebbe was saying this, I decided within a split second that as soon as I returned to England, I would make an appointment with this communal figure and straighten things up. As I was thinking it, at that very moment, the Rebbe said, "It's not a good idea for you to tell him that I told you about this." Now, unfortunately, I'm a little bit of a wise guy, so I immediately figured out a way around it. I thought, I won't do it, but I will get somebody else to do it. I was desperate to clear things up so this person shouldn't have a negative feeling about the rabbit. But again, as I was thinking this was within a split second, the rabbi said. And it's not a good idea for you to ask somebody else to go speak with him. The point is that there are 613 commandments in the Torah. If this person will not work with us on this one mitzvah, let him work with us on the other 612. He then explained to me about how to become close with this person and how to befriend him. He described how positive this man and his family were and how they could be forces for good. And to me, this became a directive for life in general. Look for the unifying force. Always look for that which you have in common with the other person and build on that.
It's such a beautiful story. It's such an amazing thing over here. How often do we allow disagreements to become a hijacking force within our lives? There's one disagreement. We had one issue that we butted heads on, and all of a sudden now, we're not normal anymore. It's awkward. We're not in a good it's one thing, and it hijacks everything else. Now, some disagreements, like you brought up before, Shelley, that's a disagreement. We need to work through this disagreement. That's not the type of disagreement where we're like, all right, let's just forget about that and move on with life. No, we need to do it, right? Or there's a disagreement between parents. Where are we going to send our kid to school? We have a disagreement on that. And it's not something you could say, yeah, we're just going to forget about it. But too often, perhaps most often, the disagreements are things that are very trivial and or things that have no relevance either which way. And we allow those things to become the things that create tension within our lives and in our relationships. And what the Rebbe's advice is over here, that's okay. Even if it's a very important issue. It's a mitzvah in the Torah that we disagree about. So either we can now build a relationship over the fact we need to meet, we need to mediate, we need this, how could we work through this problem? Or you just say, it's okay, we disagree on this. And you know what? I'm okay with that because we're different people. I can even respect the idea that you think differently about this issue than me. Move on with life. Let's now just focus. Okay, so we disagree about that. Let's focus on everything else. Let's not allow the problem to become what the issue is over here. It's such a simple but such a profound way to simply go about disagreements. Okay, we don't need to disagree on this. Let's just focus on the things we do agree on. And this was, by the way how the Rebbe really built bridges in the Jewish world. He never allowed the problems to be the big issue. Oh, what's my relationship with this guy that we don't agree on this issue? No, the opposite. That's the least of our problems. We don't focus on that. We focus on the things we could do together, and that's the goal. So instead of every single issue has to be, we got to dwell on it, and now we got to make meetings about it, we need to work through the problem. Most often and very often, the answer is just totally avoid it. Okay, we disagree on that. Moving right along. Friendship is good. The love is good. The respect is good. We don't need to talk about that. Not every single issue has to be worked through. Dear friends, this is really just phase one of the Torah's guidance. We still didn't really get to the real big idea for today. But let's just recap on page 103, the three big ideas that we know so far. How to disagree. How do we manage disagreements? Number one is don't panic. This is totally normal. It's expected to happen. It's a sign of a mature relationship. That's, if you don't panic, you're already gonna, the relationship is going to survive this, no problem. Number two, it's all about respect. If we respect each other, disagreements will do no harm, and we'll be in the right frame of mind to be able to work through the relationships. And number three, ask yourself the question, do we need to engage with this? Or maybe this is a disagreement better left alone. Way too often the answer is, you know what? We actually don't need to work through this. We don't need to debate this. There's no reason for it. So let's just move on with life and focus instead on the good stuff. Now, we're going to go a bit deeper right now. But even if we stop the class right now and we would take these 3 tips and bring it to all of our disagreements, I think we'll already be in like almost 100% better shape in all of our disagreements. Like, this is amazing. Okay, let's go even further. And most importantly, there's going to be some disagreements that we do need to address, and we're going to have to work through them. So it's easy to say, well, try to get rid of all the disagreements that are not so relevant. Okay, that's good, and that's going to get rid of a lot of stuff. But what about those critical things that, yes, we're going to have to work through? And this is where we're really going to be going deep. And dear friends, here we're going to go to part 2 of today's class. We took care of level number 1. We dispelled the common myths. But now let's go to the real, we'll call it the advanced approach. How should we see and understand disagreements within our lives? And if we could really understand disagreements, we'll understand how to navigate them. And for this, I want to back up with you. Let's really go all the way deep, deep, deep into the core of disagreements. Let's really understand the very DNA of this whole idea of division and disagreements amongst people. You ready? Let's take it back all the way to the beginning. Where do disagreements come from? Let me ask you this question. What day of creation did God make disagreements? I don't know. Is it in the Torah? Does the Torah say what day God created disagreements? It's an interesting thought. Oh, that you can say that. Day 6, the first husband and wife, and they right away argued. Oh, there we go. Someone just raised their hand over here. Yeah.
I mean, theoretically, there is a dual world to start with. There is darkness and light. There is chaos and order. So in any of those dualities, there is inherent disagreement.
Oh, so maybe, let's read over here. No, dear friends, no, sorry, we're not going to be reading yet. Let's go through the first 3 days of creation. On the first day of creation, day number 1, God creates the world. God makes light and darkness, not morning, not day and night, but light and darkness. And all the raw resources of the world are created on day number 1. Nothing is really in its place yet. This is a very big mush, which the Torah describes as chaotic. All the raw materials and resources of the world and energies of the world are just in one big cholent. And God, at the end of day number 1 of creation, looks at what he has done, and God says it is good. Day number 1 of creation. Day number 2, the world starts looking a little bit more like the world that we know of. God splits the waters of the heavens and the waters of the earth, and that is day number 2. And God looks at it and says, nothing. Day number 2, there's nothing. So that's interesting. Day number 1, God is saying it's good. That's God's reflection. Day number 2, he's looking and saying no. Day number 3, God starts creating the land and the land that we all habitate, our habitat, our natural habitat that we all know of, with the trees and the grass and the bushes, and God looks at his world, and now he says twice it is good. A double good. This is interesting. Day number 1, it's good. Day number 2, nothing. Day number 2, we're at a double good. What is going on over here? Why does God not like day number 2? Why is God double liking day number 3?
He split it.
Say it again.
You use the word split water, so he split something.
Oh, there's a split happening over here. Let's read the Medrash in text number 4. Text number 4, Shelley, page 105.
Not good. Why doesn't the Torah report it was good on the second day? Rabbi Hanina taught the division was created on that day, it is stated, let there be a separation between water and water. Rabbi Teviome taught that God declined to declare an act of division necessary for the planet's betterment as good, how much more so regarding division among people that inflicts disturbance in the world.
The Medrash is telling us day number 2 was the day that God created division. This was the first time in creation that all of a sudden God is taking something and saying, you go here, this is your position, and then I'm going to tell, then this has to go there in a different position. And this represents conflict, division, and this was a day that God created and embedded into our reality the concept of division. All conflict stems from the energy of day number 2. Now, it was a pretty good idea. God had to separate waters to create space for all these other stuff. But at the end of the day, God doesn't say it's good because it wasn't good. Okay, but why is day number 3 getting a double good? So Kabbalah really develops this idea. Day number 2, it wasn't just a separation of water. Some water goes here, some water goes there. Day number 2 was the day that the biggest conflict, the conflict of all conflicts, and the conflict that is the root of all conflict started. Day number 2 is when God created 2 domains, the waters of the heaven and the waters of earth. The split between heaven and earth, the split between the spiritual and the physical. The idea that the spiritual and the physical are not anymore working together in tandem. They don't both reflect each other, but now there are 2 opposing forces. That is what happened on day number 2. And in a sense, all the problems within our world, all conflict, all division stems from day number 2's creation problem. That the physical and the spiritual are at odds. That's not good. But, says Kabbalah, day number 3, God made land. The process of reconciliation began on day number 3. Day number 3 was where God started putting together the pieces in the place for the habitation of human beings, which are going to be the ones to bridge that gap, to fix the conflict between heaven and earth. And when we fix that problem of the division of day number 2, not only do we get back to good, not only is it like, all right, we fixed the problem, now we're good. No. When we fix the split, we come to a greater good, a double good. So day number 1 represents the unity. Everything is simple. Nobody could not get along because there's simple, indivisible unity. Day number 2 represents the division, which is not good. But day number 3 represents the reconciliation, which brings about a greater good. And the big idea here is there's a greater good that can come post a division, and that was built into the creation story. Yes, Paulina?
Okay, so when we were talking about day 1, it's darkness and light. Isn't it dual concept too, versus separating into heaven and earth?
They work together. Can you imagine darkness and light being present at the same time? It wasn't a competition. It wasn't you go here, you go there.
So they were...
There were 2 forces that somehow worked together.
They were complementing each other instead of competing with each other?
Basically, I don't know exactly what it looked like, but there wasn't that sense of division. The sense of division that you now go here, you now go there, that is something that was introduced in day number 2.
I don't think that's complementary. That's why it's not good.
Day number 2.
It's 2 separate.
No, but Polina was asking about day number 1. It's a good question, Polina. What exactly did that look like? And why didn't that represent division? But day number 2 was when God created that split. The world was not split until day number 2. The whole idea there's heaven and earth. On day number 1, there's no up, there's no down. There's light and darkness, but it's all intertwined. There's no more, this is your border, you belong here, you belong there, and now you're not anymore.
It is a range. Like the light is a range of energy. It's all the same energy, but just like it's extremes of the same energy, but not 2 separate things, right?
I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know what exactly it looked like. We could talk about it another time and try to find an answer of what the unity of day number 1 looked like. That's not the point. I don't want to get too lost in that. The point is, day number 2 is a division. day number 3 was the reconciliation, the beginning of the reconciliation, but day number 3 reconciliation doesn't bring us back to status quo. It's not like, all right, now we're back on good footing. The problem has, we could avert the problem. No, it's a double good. Now, why is there double good past? Let's read this. Text number 5. The numbers itself carry the meaning. 1, 2, and 3. The number 1 represents unity. The number 2 represents division, conflict. And the number 3 itself represents the harmony and the unity of post-conflict. Let's read that in the words of the Maharal of Prague, Rabbi Yehuda Lowy, or Livoi, however you pronounce his last name, who, legend has it, made the golem. You guys are familiar with the golem story? As I say, the Maharal of Prague made the golem. And here's my great-great-great-grandfather, something like that. And I am not going to comment if I am able to make a golem or not. You will not. Maybe one day we'll do a golem class. Okay, how to make your own golem. Okay, text number 5, page. What? We should never need it, right? Text 5, page 106. Amen. Shelley, we're up to you, right?
I did it, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Okay, my turn.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
The number 2 symbolizes a plurality that cannot unite. The number 3, by contrast, symbolizes unity. We observe this when depicting it. 2 adjacent lines like this cannot unite and do not appear as one entity. However, with 3 lines like this, the lines can unite.
There you go. Just look at this. 1 is 1. 1 is simple. That's like singularity, uniformity. The moment you have 2, you're going to have conflict. And he shows us, put 2 matchsticks next to each other. Either you could literally put them side by side, which is when they lose their individuality, so you're back again to uniformity. But if you want to have 2 sticks, and they each kind of exist on their own, there's going to be conflict, at least on one side. You can never get these 2 to really join together and still yet stand apart. So 2 represents conflict. But once you add the number 3, now we could bring it all together. That's the harmony. And the harmony is greater. And this is the idea. Uniformity is good, but it's not that great. It's the harmony. It's when there's different stuff and they could come together, that's a greater greatness. The 2 examples that Kabbalah gives for this is color, art, and music. 2 forms of art. If you're going to play music with one instrument, the good news is not much could go wrong. Because it's 1 instrument. The problem is, it's very simple. It's a one-dimensional sound. The moment you bring in 2 instruments, or more than 1 instrument, what risk do you run? 2 instruments, if they're not playing well together, it sounds horrible. Neither instrument sounds good anymore. At least that 1 instrument sounded good. But 2 instruments, if they're not on key and if they're not playing well with each other, that's not good. But what's more beautiful? 1 instrument playing a song or multiple instruments that could unite in harmony? That's the beauty. The beauty is to have many instruments. And the more you have, if they could work together, that brings out a greater beauty than uniformity could. Just true. I remember this when I was 11 years old. It was my first time I went to a real concert with a symphony, 60-piece band in Manhattan. 60-piece Philharmonic Orchestra. It was done in honor of the Rebbe's 100th birthday, the anniversary of his 100th birthday. And it was called the Chabad Centennial Symphony Celebration. And I went there as a kid, and I remember just being totally spellbound. It was in my life, probably my love for music really came from there, just witnessing this symphony playing for a few hours. And I remember seeing that there's so many instruments, which then I didn't realize that they weren't all violins. There's 4 different types of instruments within the string section, but they weren't all playing the same thing. You don't have 30 violins, each playing the same notes. They were all harmonizing each other. Sometimes there's even only 1 violin playing, sometimes multiple. That's the beauty of harmony. So too with color. A good piece of art is where there's multiple pieces of color, and they're not clashing. We all know colors could clash. You got to be careful how you use color. But if you do it properly, there's a harmony, there's a beauty in having the 3 over the 1. So, Judaism tells us like this. We need to understand conflict within our lives, disagreement, from a very deep perspective. Let's learn it from its source. Let's learn it from the narrative of creation. And we'll come out with some new insights. Dear friends, I'm going to take a look at page 107. Page 107, what does the creation story teach us? These are the lessons that the creation story teaches us. Number one, it teaches us conflict is woven into the fabric of creation. God created conflict on day number 2, and as we learned earlier, it's hardwired into the human psyche. We are all going to be different. We're not going to, live in harmony and full agreement and full conformity and uniformity with all the people within our lives. That's not a good expectation. God made conflict. That's the world we live in. That's number one. Number 2, is the conflict good? No. Day number 2, which is the day God made conflict, God didn't say it's good. Conflict is not good. We don't like conflict. It's not good. Point number 3, but if navigated properly, conflict can give rise to reconciliation. Creation didn't stop on day number 2. Creation marches forward. There is a day number 3. And day number 3, point number 4, is that the reconciliation of day number 3 brings greater value than what we had before. And this is the big idea. So sometimes Judaism will say, this was level number 1. Okay. Expect. It's healthy. It's okay. Relationships are allowed to have disagreements. Number 2, make sure there's a healthy dose of respect. Number 3, choose your battles. Maybe we don't need to actually deal with this disagreement. But now, the real thing that Judaism is telling us is that when we need to deal with a disagreement, don't get stuck in it, number 1. It's a phase. Day number 2 leads you to day number 3. And the day number 3 brings us to a greater place than before we had the day number 2. That's the big idea. God created conflict to create a space, which that space itself is not good, but it leads us to the number 3, which is amazing. And this is the big idea, that disagreements in our lives are not just problems we have to somehow try to, let's get past it. Let's get past this bump in the road and hope it doesn't leave too much damage in its wake. No, it's the opportunity for us to get to a deeper and better place. What's that deeper and better place? So now we have the ideal, but let's try to understand that more. What does that mean that post-disagreement we get to a better place? So let me share with you about 2 other Talmudic figures. There are 2 sages, 2 people in the Talmud. One, his name was Rabbi Yochanan. The other, his name was Reish Lakish. Yochanan and Reish Lakish started off as 2 children. They both grew up in the same community in northern Israel. And Rabbi Yochanan grew up to be a great sage of the Jewish people, a great Torah scholar. And young Reish Lakish, he was called Shimon ben Lakish. His father was Lakish. Shimon ben Lakish grew up and became the Al Capone of his day. Chief gangster, chief robber, and chief hooligan, terrorizing northern Israel. That's, what was that?
I'm always proud of those guys.
Listen, this is the story. 2 childhood friends, and they went, what was that?
I'm glad we have them too.
We had them too. This was Shimon ben Lakish. He rose to the top. Okay. Many years later, they're all adults. Rabbi Yochanan is a top sage. Shimon ben Lakish is a top gangster, top mobster. And they meet up. The Talmud tells us that Rabbi Yochanan was physically beautiful. He was just a beautiful looking guy. And Reish Lakish sees him, and being the muscular, brute, vulgar type of guy he is, he says, your beauty belongs for a woman. That's a quip he gives him. So Rabbi Yochanan, not to be outdone, quips back and says, and your strength belongs for Torah study. Reish Lakish is a very muscular guy, very, very strong-minded, and he says, my strength belongs for a woman, my beauty belongs for a woman, your strength belongs for Torah study. And then Rabbi Yochanan tells him that I know that if you would dedicate your strength to studying Torah, you would become an absolutely amazing Torah scholar and sage. and he gave him some words of encouragement. He says, if you will join me and allow me to teach you Torah, I'm going to vouch for you so much, I'm even going to allow you, I'm going to give you my sister. I'm going to offer you to date my sister. And if you think I look good, just wait till you meet her. And the deal was done. Reish Lakish said, okay, let's try it out. And he came and he left his bad path and he went to study under Rabbi Yochanan. And it's true, he brought great strength and stamina and willpower to the study of Torah. And in no time, he became an unbelievably giant sage, a giant scholar. He became Rabbi Yochanan's peer and he got married to his sister. And it was wonderful. They lived happily ever after. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they studied till the last day of their lives together, but they fought like cats and dogs. Whenever one of them would say an opinion, the other one would fight back and say, no, I disagree with you. Literally, in the Talmud, they never agree. They're always quoted together. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. They're always disagreeing. Comes the day, and Reish Lakish passes away. And Rabbi Yochanan, his dear friend, his Torah, his student, and his peer in study, and his brother-in-law, Rabbi Yochanan is devastated. Let's read what the Talmud says about what happens then. Text 6. This is a very very sad story. Text 6, where are we up to? Barbara, page 109.
When Reish Lakish passed away, Rabbi Yochanan grieved terribly. The sages told each other who should visit him to provide comfort. Let Rabbi Elazar ben Hadad go, for he is a brilliant scholar. Rabbi Elazar ben Hadad went and sat before Rabbi Yochanan. To each idea that Rabbi Yochanan taught, Rabbi Elazar ben Hadad responded, I know of an earlier teaching that supports your opinion. Rabbi Yochanan exclaimed, are you supposed to be like Reish Lakish? In my discussions with Reish Lakish, whenever I would share a viewpoint, he would raise 24 objections, and I would be forced to deliver 24 responses. As a result of our intense give and take, the entire subject was crystallized. You, however, constantly tell me there is an earlier teaching that supports your opinion. Do I not already know that my ideas are sound? Rabbi Yochanan went about in grief. He tore his clothes, wept, and called out, where are you, Reish Lakish? Where are you, Reish?
It's a fascinating story. So say, okay, he lost a study partner. Let's send in somebody else smart to sit with him. And so they send Rabbi Elazar ben Padat, and he goes and he says, yeah, that's such a smart thing what you're saying. And yeah, I could find the support for what you just said. Rabbi Yochanan said, come on, you're insulting my intelligence over here. I don't need somebody to tell me, oh, you said a good thing. I know I'm smart. I know what I'm saying. I want somebody to challenge me. I want somebody to make me think harder, to have to make me work through my ideas. And it says he was so, this loss of having Reish Lakish, it led him to he lost his mind, and it led to his death. Tragic story. This is how Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish passed away. So it's a beautiful story. Two really, really dear friends. Okay, but in any case, let's look at what's happening over here. Rabbi Yochanan is arguing with Reish Lakish, and you would say that's it. Two big egos butting heads with each other. And no, you realize, what does Reish Lakish want over here? What does Rabbi Yochanan want over here? He's not looking for an echo chamber. I want people who are going to sit there and say I'm right, and always agree with me. I want somebody who sees things from a totally different vantage point. And when I say I see this, I wouldn't say, yeah, that looks good. No, say I see things from a totally different place. And then force me to have to rethink my assumptions. Force me to have to rethink my logic. 24 questions, and I have to come up with 24 different answers. That's what I want. And what does he say? As a result of our intense give and take, the subject was crystallized. I like this imagery over here. It's like the way to learn in Judaism also. In the Western world, how do you study? It's like this. You go to a lecture, you sit down, you shut up, and somebody tells you what to think. I'm going to give you wisdom and just accept it from me, right? Trust me, bro. In Judaism, that's not how you learn. You learn by give and take. We're playing ball over here. I throw you a ball and I challenge you, and we'll debate it. Let's tease it out together, but not in a way of of digging in my heels and I need to defend my position. We're trying to understand something over here. Approach conversations with an open mind. That's what he's going for. Okay, we had some questions over here. Yes?
I have a comment related to what you said at the beginning. Now, after 25 years, I finally understand the purpose of marriage.
So we'll get to the purpose of this in practical life in a moment. But this is a very, very big idea.
Believe me, you still don't know.
We still got another 25 years, huh? Okay, listen, lange gesunde Jahren. Many long, healthy years together, for many more years. Most people look at their opinions as things that we have to worship. It's my opinion. And I'm not going to allow somebody else to prove me wrong. So I'm going to dig in my heels and just try to somehow rationalize that I'm right, which is the total opposite of being really intelligent. This debate over here between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish was, we're searching for the truth. And I value you because you give me a gift that I don't have. I am stuck in my own subjective viewpoint. I could only see things from my vantage point. And God made me that my mind and my heart sees things and feels things in a certain way. And that gives me blind spots. We all know that. Every position has blind spots. The gift of the give and take, the gift of even disagreements is it helps you see the issue from a much richer place. And hopefully that both of you could reach a whole different place, a whole different appreciation. It doesn't mean you're going to necessarily agree with each other. But what it does mean is you get a whole different understanding. A search for the truth and the growth that comes from it. This is the number 3. And this is actually the reason why God made us to be different. Why would God make us different? Why would God make us that we have disagreements with the people that we're in relationships with? This is the reason. Let's read text number 7 from the Rebbe. Alex, page 111.
The Almighty deliberately created humans with diverse perspectives. Although that allows the possibility that due to differing opinions, humans could wind up not treating each other with respect. Obviously, God's intention in creating people this way was not to enable conflict, but its exact opposite, to facilitate a superior unity that emerges on the heels of division, the advantage of the number 3. Presence of multiple opinions yields multiple fresh points and ideas. Each individual contributes from their unique intellect, eventually leading to a better conclusion and decision. When different individuals with dissimilar perspectives discuss a matter jointly, without any individual suppressing or forfeiting their viewpoint, that would contradict the nature viewed in us by God. Matter can be viewed from several angles, leading to a truer conclusion than any single viewpoint. Needless to say, parties set this as their goal. They will conduct their discussion peacefully and with mutual respect.
This is really the goal of disagreements. We have to have all the pieces of advice we've had until now. Number 1, expect it. It's okay, it's healthy. We could disagree, and we could also even discuss it. I respect your different viewpoint, and I even value it. I revere it. And if it's something which we feel we need to work through, let's work through it, but not in a way of butting heads, not in a way of digging in our heels and our own ego, but let's actually discuss this, talk it through with respect, and try to reach a higher form of a conclusion. That's what we call growing together. This explains Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they weren't friends despite their disagreements. They would fight a whole day, but still they managed to be friends. Like they say about Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Scalia, they were very good friends. They once asked Justice Scalia, how do you get it? You don't agree on anything. How are you good friends with her? So he said, what's there not to like? Besides her opinions on law, of course. Right? So what's there not to like about you, besides your opinions? That wasn't Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Like, yeah, I don't agree with you, but it's okay, we can still be friends. No. Their relationship, their friendship was because of their differences. They valued each other, they valued their differences, and they both grew from those disagreements. So this is what Judaism tells us over here. The point is, we navigate disagreements not by forfeiting our viewpoints, and not by trying to stifle the other person's viewpoint, but by valuing and bringing both to the table. We'll challenge each other with an open mind in a way of acceptance. And when we show that, that actually creates an environment where we could grow through the relationships. And hopefully when there's mutual respect and mutual understanding and a respect for the fact that we see things differently, that will lead us to a better place. Now, easier said than done, but this is the way to do it. Now, you know what? Here, we'll show you a video. Let's do the video. You ready? This is a cool video. You'll get the light, Alex? Thank you. We'll do the video and then we'll wrap up over here. We're starting to run out of time.
The second thing I learned in Judaism is how to argue, debate, disagree, say no to each other, fight, argue again and again and again.
No, it doesn't make sense. Because the whole point of saying that retroactively it works was only if it doesn't have a student because you're eventually going to realize you lost it, and then you're going to be Mayai.
They're not actually fighting, they're just studying. I have never seen such a thing.
There are bad arguments and there are good arguments. Bad arguments are, I hate you, I want to put you down, I want to enforce my opinion and my values on you. Good arguments is, I want to fight it out with you so that we can both come to the truth and we can come closer to each other through the argument. And Jews love a good argument.
The way Jews study is done in pairs of two who are supposed to debate religion. It's called Chavruta, which comes from the word friend, chaver. Does anybody here get offended
By?
by somebody disagreeing with you and telling you you're wrong?
The goal is
the same team.
All the time.
On the same team.
The goal is mutual understanding.
In Judaism, debating is part of the religion, and no one gets killed or harmed for having a different opinion.
So it's two friends getting together to fight each other, but fight for the truth. And when we finished and we close our books, then we shake hands and we have a hug and we go and eat together and pray together.
Some people say if you put two Jews in a room, you get three opinions. This is funny, but it's actually a good thing. The more you disagree, the closer you get to the truth.
Jews like to argue because we are completely devoted and committed to finding the truth.
And maybe that is why 22% of Nobel Prizes go to Jewish scientists.
Because of these two major factors, the culture of arguing for the truth and the drive to improve the world and make it a better place, put those two things together, you're going to win lots of Nobel Prizes.
That's a lot of them.
A lot of them. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. Inshallah.
I just want to make mention, this is a video off of YouTube. I don't know what his positions are. I'm not saying he's a good guy. He's an Israeli Arab, which I don't know. I actually tried to, before showing a video of somebody, I want to know a little bit. Do I support his views? Do I not? I don't know. But the point is, it's a cool video. He made a video where he spent a month exploring Judaism, and I thought it was a cool thing to show over here. This is what it is. It's a whole different way to look at it. Now, dear friends, we're really running out of time. Give me 5 minutes over here. We'll try to wrap up quickly. This attitude of the way we approach a disagreement, we can either enter a disagreement with a lot of respect and an openness, an open mind, and say, no, I want to hear what you have to say, and I want to try to understand and figure this out together with you. That's mutual growth. And then there's a way to go to disagreements where it's literally a battle of the egos. I say this, you say this, I'm not even interested in considering what you have to say. I totally don't respect you. I'm just digging in my heels, whether it makes sense or not even. Which soul do you think belongs to which one? The godly soul is able to go and say, this is not about me. I'm not trying to defend my positions. I'm actually, I'm curious what you have to say. I'm looking for a truth which is beyond me. The animal soul, the second he senses a disagreement, he goes into fight or flight mode. Ooh, I can't lose this battle because then I lose. I can't lose. That's animal soul thinking. I need to assert my presence, my existence. And then it creates disagreements and fights, which take you downhill real fast. Once again, we see to really get in touch internally in the place that we could have disagreements which are inevitable to people in our lives, we need to be more soul people. And if we're a little bit more, the more in touch we are with our soul, it's going to become a lot more natural to enter into those disagreements, and we're doing it as the adult in the room in a much more healthy way. So dear friends, let us conclude over here very, very briefly with some practical tips. Let's move on to the final point of the class. We started with level number 1, which was the common myths, the 3 basic ways to enter into the disagreement. And then we did the advanced approach of what the disagreement really is all about, a way to reach from day number 2 to day number 3. Let's spend briefly practical tips. Practical tip number 1. We learned last week a lot about listening. The whole art of listening is so important for disagreements. The only way we can have healthy disagreements is if we are bringing all the wisdom that we learned from last week into this topic. So the whole idea of really listening in closely, not trying to formulate your response while the other person's talking, but to really be curious and listening in properly, listening into the nuances. Everything we learned last week, that is number one, the first best piece of advice. If we do that, we'll be much better in our disagreements. Number two, let us read text number 8. Mark, page 114.
Softly spoken words of the wise are heard, louder than the roars of foolish brutes.
It's very, very simple. When there's disagreements, very often we start raising our voice, and we think that the louder we scream, the more assertive we are, and the truth is the opposite. The louder we speak, the less receptive the person becomes. And the softer we speak, the more communication is actually happening over here. So this is the idea, we need to speak softly. This is what King Solomon says in Ecclesiastes. You want people to hear you? Speak softer, especially when it comes to disagreements. Now, it's not only in the tone of voice, it's also word choice. Sometimes you could be speaking very softly, be a very, very harsh word choice. So speaking gently is in two things. It's tone and in word voice. Mark, read this one as well. Text number 9.
Talking tenderly simply means that we tell our story as a story rather than discussing it as a hard fact. Perhaps you are unaware, suggests that you are not absolutely certain. My opinion says you are sharing an opinion and no more. When sharing a story, strike a blend between confidence and humility. Sharing in a way that expresses appropriate confidence in your conclusions while demonstrating that, if called for, you want your conclusion challenged. To do so, change the fact is, in my opinion, swap everyone knows that before I'm talking to 3 of our suppliers who think that. Soften it's clear to me, too. I'm beginning to wonder if we soften your message because we're trying to add meaning to the pool, not force it down people's throats. If we're too forceful, the information won't make it into the pool. One of the ironies of dialogue is that when talking with those holding opposing opinions, the more convinced and forceful you act, the more resistant others become. Speaking in absolute and overstated terms does not increase your influence. It increases it. The converse is also true. The more tentative you speak, the more often people become to your opinion.
So when our sages say speak softly, it's not only in tone of voice, it's the way you're speaking. Gentle words. Yes, we're disagreeing here, but it's not about me shoving my opinion upon you. It's once I'm going to share with you my viewpoint. I want to hear yours as well. So we have on page 116 a few different options. Don't say this is what went wrong, this is what we have to do, that won't work, this is the best idea. The fact is, everyone knows that. It's clear that. Those are very categorical. You're saying this is it and that's it. Or using these forceful words like absolutely, must, always, never, can, certainly, worst. By the way, it's very interesting. Whenever I write an email or a message, I always go back to it and I pull out all these forceful words, like the word very. Always pull out the word very. All these words just make it very categorical. It's like when I write it, I just use them, but then I try to always go back and say, let me try to pull them out now. And it's very beautiful. This has been a practice of Jewish scholarship for the past 2,000 years. Whenever our sages would share an opinion, they would never say, this is the truth, this is the opinion. How would they say it? Let's read this over here. Diane, would you like to read? Text 10, page 117.
It is common for Halakhic authorities to state their opinions with a term of moderation, efshar, meaning perhaps this is so. Nevertheless, subsequent Halakhic authorities will proceed to cite such an opinion as the unequivocal view of an earlier sage, omitting the modification, and they will base their rulings on the stated opinion. This is done because efshar does not necessarily imply doubt. Rather, it's an unpretentious way to express oneself.
Very fascinating. Within all of halachic literature, they're never saying this is the law. Whenever they advance a new idea, perhaps, maybe we could say. And everybody understands that they weren't in doubt of themselves. All later generations would say that was his opinion. But it was a way of keeping things open. It's not about one person forcing opinions, but it's about keeping the conversation going because we want all those perspectives. Final thought. Final thought is, perhaps you could say, easy to say, I have a disagreement with somebody in my life, and I went to your class, Rabbi Dubov, so now I know how to show up. You know what the only problem is? I want to be all positive, and I want to speak nicely, but he's he's coming and fighting with me. What do I do? And Judaism says, no, you don't need both of you to be on the same page. If even one does it, it works. Let's conclude with this final thought. Lisa, page text 11, a verse from Proverbs. No problem. We got a lot of time over here.
As water mirrors a face, so does one human heart reflect another.
All you need is one person to show up. And that reflection, in psychology we call this emotional reciprocity. People reciprocate. If people are ready for a fight, but they see that you're not interested in fighting, no, actually, I value your opinion. I want to talk about it with you. I want to think this through with you. It disarms the other person, and it creates such a healthy environment. It takes two to tango, but it only takes one to solve the problem, and to make disagreeing not a problem in the relationship, but the opposite, an opportunity for growth and even for connection. And dear friends, that is what we got for today. Thank you all so much for joining. Good luck disagreeing at Thanksgiving dinner. And, just kidding, don't try to do that. And next week we'll see you all, lesson 4, the art of positivity. We're moving right along. Thank you all for joining.